Hello, dear listeners. On this very special episode of You Are What You Read, we are joined by country music sensation, hometown boy, wonderful human being inside and out, the great Kenny Chesney, with his brand new memoir, Heart, Life, Music. Kenny co-wrote this book with the great Holly Gleason, the world-renowned journalist who has written for the Rolling Stone, the Los Angeles Times, the New York Times, and Hits. We recorded this conversation at our favorite hang joint, the Book of the Month Club in New York City. Here to introduce us today is the editorial director and host of the Book of the Month podcast, our friend, Brianna Goodman.
I am delighted to be here introducing and not hosting today's event. We have two very special guests here with us today. Adriana Trajani, who you all know and love, is a two-time Book of the Month author and is also the host of a podcast, You Are What You Read. We are delighted to have her here taping a live event with none other than Kenny Chesney. I honestly can't believe it, Adriana. I honestly don't even know how to introduce your biography because I know everyone in this room already knows it, but Kenny Chesney, of course, is a famed country artist, has sold over 35 million albums worldwide, and this year is being inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. So on top of all of that, he's also written a book which comes out this November, and we are so excited to have them both here for this conversation. So without further ado, Adriana and Kenny, come on up.
That's you.
Hi, guys.
Oh, my God. Wow. You're in for a treat. You're in for a treat. First of all, we're from the same part of the world.
Close, yeah.
Which is the most beautiful. Yeah, it's close. But, of course, East Tennessee made you like a Tennessee Vols fan.
Yeah.
And
I grew up on that.
And since I'm from Big Stone Gap, Virginia, and my dad went to Notre Dame, we were Notre Dame fans. And one of the first games you saw was the Tennessee Vols whooping Notre Dame.
Yeah, I grew up in a place where this was, obviously before we had all the devices that we have, and it was before even ESPN. And so what you saw and what you digested as a child is what you were told to watch, what you had to watch. We had 3 channels and PBS. So Tennessee football was like bigger than life to me. So the first time I went with my father to the game, you're right, it was a Tennessee Notre Dame game. And I was a child walking into that stadium going, wow.
That's why you write an autobiography, see, because now we know. We know where you were, what built you, what shaped you.
Yeah.
One of my favorite autobiographies is Coal Miner's Daughter, Loretta Lynn's. And so when I sat down with this, and I know you collaborated with Holly Gleason, which she also did with a guy named George Vexey. But your voice is so clear here, and what you chose to tell us and write about is I pretty much could see you from your birth to this moment right now, and it is really the story of a primer about how an artist is built. So I want let's start with Kaz Walker. Let's start, okay, because. They don't have any idea
Kaz Walker, all right.
Oh, gosh, of course. Okay, because we, like you said, we got the 3 channels and PBS, which we watched Zoom on, but that went off after like midnight. That was, I don't know what happened to PBS. It like went off the air. There was a fuzz channel. But let's talk about Kaz Walker because he typifies kind of everything, and that is the area. He was a grocer. He had grocery stores, and he had a TV show, which was a variety show on Saturday afternoons on WBIR. Take it from there. What do you first remember?
Well, what I remember is when I was a kid, my mother and I lived with my grandparents because my stepfather was in Vietnam. So I remember living at her house. Well, let me back up just a second. My mother and my grandmother were in the hospital at the same time having me and my Aunt Sharon. So it was my mom's sister. So I always had a sister, but she was really my Aunt Missy. I said Aunt Sharon, right? No, I said my Aunt
Sharon's
Missy.
your aunt.
Yes.
And Missy's her daughter.
Yeah. Well, no.
No?
No.
Do I have it wrong?
See how screwed up my family already is? So my mom and my grandmother were in the hospital at the same time, having me and my Aunt Missy. So
There you go. Right. Grandma Lucy.
And so I lived with them for 3 or 4 years. And when we got old enough to go to school, my grandmother went to work in the school cafeteria so she could be close to me and my Aunt Missy. And we would leave really early because, she had to prep in the cafeteria. And it allowed me to go into the gym and shoot basketball a lot, and that's where, I was there an hour and a half before, school started. But on the way to school every morning on our local TV station was Kaz Walker. And I remember the first time I heard bluegrass music. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was called bluegrass music. I just remember hearing these acoustic instruments that had a really specific drive to it, that had 3-part harmony, and I was in a coma looking at it. I was just like, wow, I didn't know what that was, but it made such when you're young, you're very impressionable, and it created such a blueprint in my soul. And I think that happens to all of us when we're young. If you're brought into a chaotic situation when you're in a child, you might have some chaos in it, or if it's peaceful, you know what I mean? Absolutely. Mine, thank God, because my grandmother watched Kaz Walker, my earliest memories of happiness was music.
One of the things about the Kaz Walker show is, well, it's the first place I saw Dolly Parton. I bet it was the first place you saw her too.
Yeah.
And he, it would be as if, I don't know, if you took a billionaire and gave him a TV show, because to us he was a big businessman of the area.
No, he was a figure.
He was a figure.
In
and
Knoxville,
he had a gravelly voice.
Yeah.
And at the end of the show, do you remember this? Because I talked to my friends.
We had a slogan, but I don't know if we could say it on the air.
You can't.
No.
No, but you could. This is a podcast. Say it. You can't beat our prices.
No, he had a saying that he said at the end of every show. I can't believe I flew to New York to say this, but I'm saying it. His slogan was, at the end of every show, you can beat our prices, but you can't beat our meat. So that's what. That's
brilliant.
What it was.
It's
and
brilliant.
He owned groceries, so.
I'm glad you said it. I didn't. Because I get letters.
So yeah.
But
I'll probably get a few letters, but I didn't make it up. He actually said it.
But do you remember at the end? Okay, so he did his slogan, but then he would use the show as a public forum for people that had passed bad checks in his store. Do you remember this? We grew up terrified to write a check. Like we went and we did a Christmas club. Do you know what a Christmas club is? You would take like 50 cents to the bank every week, and then by Christmas time you had $8 to buy 17 gifts. It was great, right? Taught you how to save. But he'd go, Pebble Mullins, get down here. You go $14.17. That's how he did it, and it was like public shaming in the town square, and we were sweating like animals when he did that.
But isn't it? I mean, it's in writing this book with Holly, and that came up, right? Mm-hmm. It's. I'm going back to what I said a few minutes ago. It's really, and it's insane at how impressionable we are and what comes back as an adult when you start to remember your childhood, and that was one of the things at my grandmother's house. And that show. And my mom and my Aunt Sharon, my mom's a twin, and they're both 4'11". And my grandfather used to dress them up and take them to all these places to sing, church, school, the fair, stuff, right? And they actually went and sang on.
So the pipes, the gift of song, the pipes came from mom's side of the family.
That's exactly right.
And then dad's side of the family, to balance that, the other pillar of civilization in Southwest Virginia and East Tennessee is sports.
That's it.
Okay, now talk about Dad and the sports thing, because you're quite an athlete. You're very buff. You work out. You stay in shape.
Well, thank you. So when I was a kid, my mom and my dad divorced before I was 1. So then I got a little older, and then I realized, wow, I've got this guy that was my stepfather. I call this guy. I got stepfather, and then all of a sudden I went, okay, I got another dad, it was really, it was. I had to figure that out. Mm-hmm. So every other weekend or whenever I would go, it was a completely different experience because my dad was single. He had all of his single buddies. By then he had ESPN, and he was a basketball coach. So when I would go to my dad's, I would go to his games, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And then I would go. This guy's name was Jim Cogdell and John Staley, and they were all in their 30s, and they had pools, and I couldn't wait to go to Dad's house because it was the complete opposite of the structured life that I had with Mom and grandmother and church and doing the dishes, and you know what I mean?
I get it exactly. And here's the thing, too, as the book unspools, you realize that those two traditions you were raised in is how you began to then own your life. Because there's this idea of, and we're going to get to this because it's mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling how many people that you have performed in front of and how many millions and millions and millions of albums you've sold and the reach you have in around the world. But you held on to these two basic tenets, which was work hard and then play. Play is athleticism, camaraderie, brotherhood. You know what I'm getting at?
Sure.
You
And
know,
I was
you
able
got the
to.
women thing and you got the man thing.
Well,
Rotating.
I mean, I did come from a family where, we worked really hard. That was just part of how I grew up. I didn't know any other way. But, I guess I get that from my mother. We also love to have fun. My mom is, she just absolutely is a joy to be around. And she loves the ocean. She loves the water. She loves the sun. They're in the Florida Keys right now as we speak. But I got that from her. But I think that for me, the discipline part of it, I guess I got that from both.
Both.
But my father being a coach, I think I got a lot of the discipline.
Because you were an athlete in high school. I want to get to that.
Okay.
Okay, but this intrigued me. There was a Thanksgiving when you're with your aunt, your uncle, your great uncle, I believe, and your mom.
Yeah.
And they say, we're going to go here. We're going to a concert. I can't believe this, Bill. I can't believe it. Right. Because it would be like when you go to heaven, you'd hear those three on a bill.
Well, yeah, it was a lot.
Okay, so
like
tell that.
So, and looking back, it was a genius idea for a concert promoter to have a concert, in East Tennessee on Thanksgiving night because, we usually do Thanksgiving during the day and then we watch football or whatever, and then by the nighttime, it's over. So that night we went to see Conway Twitty, George Jones, and Merle Haggard all in the same show. And for us, that was a really big deal.
For anybody, that's huge.
Yeah.
And you, in the book, I love the way you did this, is you brought each one out on stage and the effect that went through you.
Well,
I'm telling you, this book is like unputdownable.
The way that we do things is much different than what I saw that night. When we go on stage, like coming here today, I passed MetLife Stadium. I've played it probably 8 times or whatever it is. Well, before we go on stage, I mean, there's a lot of loud music. There's a big video playing. We're pulling everybody in. We're raising the roof. We're getting everybody ready for the next couple of hours. What I saw that night was more dramatic. It was simpler but more powerful in a way, because Conway came out on stage, and it was, like I said, the complete opposite of fanfare. He just walked out, had a spotlight on him. They said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Conway Twitty," and he walked out and said, "Hello, darling," and the place went crazy. And I was with my mom, my Aunt Sharon, and their uncle Ken, my great uncle. Yeah,
got it.
So when I saw that, it helped change me.
I want to pull a thread from that to the Tin Man. I don't think I even need my notes. Put them over here. I have to get back. I'll get to it. I know this. So I'm just like, so pulling a thread from that. those guys, and you mentioned why this is a primer for anybody that wants to understand American music. This thread we're pulling from Conway saying, "Hello, darling." Oh, God, can't even imagine. And Merle Haggard, who's considered the great poet. He's the poet laureate of country music. Mm-hmm. Nobody writes like Merle, right? And then you write the Tin Man. And the Tin Man comes from you being alone, watching The Wizard of Oz, which we might point out has led to many, many, many career highs for many people, from Judy Garland in the movies to Wicked on Broadway to all that. But yours comes from this notion of the one television set and seeing that movie once a year. I mean, this is intense. This is like, I'm going to get to economic uncertainty because when you're raised in it, you got to develop an imagination. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. Yes. Yes. And I was, it was the first year that I had, actually within the first 6 months, I had, just graduated East Tennessee State University in Johnson City.
Great school.
And then I moved to Nashville to chase this dream, right? And I'm in an apartment. I have a cooler as a coffee table, an old TV. I've got some sort of stereo over here, and that's really all I had, you know? And I was watching The Wizard of Oz, and I thought, wow, when it was over, I thought, how ironic that the Tin Man goes through the whole movie wanting a heart. And then when he gets it, he feels it breaking. He feels the negative effect of it. And I went, wow, I just thought it was ironic and interesting. Like, I wish that I didn't have to feel it. I wish I was the Tin Man. And he wants to be me, you know? So that's where the idea of that song came from. But that led me, that opened a lot of doors for me, you know? But what the parallel that you're talking about, without having ridden to school in my mother's car and hearing Alabama and George Jones and Merle Haggard and Conway Twitty and all these people that you know, I had rock music in my life. I mean, I loved the Eagles. I loved when Tom Petty came. I loved Tom Petty. I loved all this music. But when you grew up where I did, I mean, you're exposed to what you're exposed to. You know, we didn't have all the streaming services. We didn't have, you know, like if it wasn't introduced to you, you didn't hear it. Like, I didn't hear
radio.
Springsteen.
You had a radio.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't know the genius of Springsteen until I started writing songs, because we didn't hear that in my grandmother's house, or Bob Marley, or any of that stuff. So I didn't hear that stuff until I got older, in college.
But what informed you was the greatest foundation you could ever hope for in those country music songs that, you know, you went to the Carter Fold, place I went to a lot as a kid. I love the Carter Fold. And
I played it twice with the ETSU Bluegrass Band. And again, and there's a lot of this in the book too, but you know, a lot of these experiences that are in the book, when you're a kid and you're doing stuff, you in the moment, you don't necessarily get how big of a deal it is until later on in your life.
And you look back.
Small moments that you think, or small moments, or just passing moments at the time, you get later on in your life and you start writing a book, or even if you don't write a book, I mean, you look back and go, wow, that was a really significant thing. And playing the Carter Fold was one of them.
You know, you write about these venues too. It's like a trip. It's a journey. It's Homeric almost, the way you do it. And you take us through your life. It is never, I was never for a moment bored. I was always fascinated to see what was going to happen next. But you're an interesting man in that you got a college education. And you know where we're from, that's a fraught situation. Sometimes we don't get those college educations. But East Tennessee State University is one of the great places. It's an incredible creative arts program there.
That's right.
But you took marketing.
I did. I was going to be a music major, I thought, and then I took music theory. And then I went, that was enough for me.
That's how they get you not want to be a star.
Yeah, okay. I'll tell you. I mean, I changed my mind really quickly, but so I respect anybody that's a music major. You know, that is an unbelievable thing. But I got a marketing degree and an advertising degree, But my soul and my path was in music. But that started in Johnson City. I was a freshman in college. I really had no direction, no idea what I wanted to do. I learned the 4 Ps of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. But I didn't want to spend my life implementing them. I wanted to write music.
It was nice to know.
That's
the
nice to
4
know.
Ps. You didn't
But
need
I
to use
wanted
them.
to. Music captured me when I was a kid, and I didn't know how. I didn't know the road I was going to go down. I just knew that's. I felt that's how God was pushing me to go.
Okay, let's get into the faith, because where we're from, that's another pillar in the eternal cathedral, is faith, and it isn't just something you do on Sundays. You were at church a lot of the week, like we were. You went to church a lot.
Well, my grandparents, my grandfather was a deacon at Cedar Ford Baptist Church, and my grandmother went there. I mean, this was a small town, and so I went to that church a lot growing up.
So the first time you knew you had this voice, this beautiful, you have a voice like honey, but it's quite powerful. Did you find it in church the first time?
The first time it was at school, actually. But I went to church and sang a lot in church, but not necessarily like doing a solo, in the middle of a service or whatever. I never really did that. But in school, I was in a music program at school, and the first time my mom ever heard me sing, and she was so nervous because she goes, "You're going to do what? You're going to get up and sing in front of the student body and all their parents?" And I went, "Yeah, I think so." And it was such a different thing for both of us, because this was the first time, and I got up, and I forgot what it was I sang. I have no idea. But it was the moment where I remember driving home with her and my stepfather, and they were stunned. And I was stunned because I'd never done it. I was like, wow. I mean, that was kind of cool. But at that moment, I didn't know that music was going to be my life at all. I wanted to be an athlete. So I was playing sports all the time. Music was something that was way over here.
What's interesting about this book is the sports, the athletics are in there. There's photographs, and it's fantastic. But it wasn't a moment in any game. It was that moment when you sang.
Yeah.
That
I was a very average athlete.
You no,
Very
but
average.
you said something. You wrote this beautiful part that I never read in a book in my life, which was what it's like when you're in high school and your athletic career is over. I never thought of high school like that. I thought, well, you keep playing? No, but not everybody gets to keep playing. It's only
But it was a season, I mean, not just that season. It was the season of my life,
Right.
It was
And
one of the hardest
ending.
days, because we were average at best. I mean, and so we played the last game of the year, and we weren't going to any playoff game. I was a senior, and after that game was over, I sat in the locker room with my shoulder pads on and my uniform, and I didn't want to take it off because I knew that there was a page turning in my life, and that was it. And that was a really hard day, but
and where we're from, the uniform then was
No,
washed and put
that was
away
a
for
big
next
deal.
year, and somebody else was going to wear your number the following fall after you
But
graduated.
when you think about that being your, ever since I'm old enough to remember, I've had a ball glove on my hand, or a basketball in my hands, or football in my hands out in the backyard. So that was my whole identity until I was a senior in high school, and all of a sudden, your life moved forward, and you're going to have to find something else, right? And that was a hard day. And my high school football coach, I talk about this in the book a little bit. He came over, and he had seen a lot of guys just like me. None of us played college football. He's seen all guys like me, really. So, but he had a way of it was, and I respect him to this day. And he knew what that turning of the page felt like, and it was really difficult. But I keep that with me to this day. The lessons that I learned playing high school football, especially the way we do things now. When it comes to the way I look at discipline, it's you either going to be if you don't have discipline, then you're going to be distracted. And so that's how I got, the mindset to go out there on the road. I have 120 employees out on the road. But the idea of creating something with positive energy and love and doing something together, I got those lessons playing high school football. And so all those things, and just the camaraderie, like you said earlier, and I really believe that, and that's that's why I love football so much in sports, especially team sports, because and I'm not dissing people that play tennis, because I love tennis and golf, but those are individual sports,
right?
So
you're hitting yourself.
But I learned a lot about creating what we've created out there on the road by playing a team sport. And my high school football coach had everything to do with that.
So in building who Kenny Chesney is, you have to understand East Tennessee, what it looks like a little bit. You got the Smoky Mountains there, leading from the Blue Ridge, from Appalachia. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's the most...
Especially this time of year.
Oh, man, it's on fire now with all the colors changing and stuff. But
we leaned on those things. I mean, as a kid, and it's still to this day, my whole family still lives there. But we didn't have a lot. We had church, we had music, we had sports, we had school, and each other.
But you weren't really aware of economic uncertainty. You knew of it, but it existed.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, like we weren't poor at all, but we were just down the street.
Got it.
See what I mean? Like we didn't know it.
Like it was a big deal.
Like
building up this, families go on vacation, think nothing of it. Some families. But where we're from, it was a very, very big deal to go to the ocean, which was Myrtle Beach.
Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. That's where we went. The Riviera. It had games. It had beach. And that was if I had to build the other pillar in the Kenny Chesney Palazzo, it's going to be that ocean, because that also... So interesting, Kenny. You have not really gone outside that tight circle very far.
Not far.
Not far.
No.
I mean, maybe not even outside the circle, because you still love the ocean, the water, the salt, the feeling of it. People accused you of wanting to be the heir to Jimmy Buffett at a certain point because you loved the ocean so much. But that idea...
But that was deeply rooted,
Yes.
the love of all that stuff.
Yes.
And honestly, who isn't a Jimmy Buffett wannabe?
Oh, everybody is. Everybody is.
I think
even
we all...
even now in heaven, I'm sure he's kicking ass in heaven.
I told him.
See, on the other side, I mean, he's not going anywhere. But there was this other aspect to this, the camaraderie that is in your particular American art form, which I want to get to, which is the relationship you have, because you're a songwriter first, and then you're a performer. And the two intersect sometimes when you go out on the road, of course, you're writing on the road. But let's talk about the brother and sisterhood, because there's no other American art form where there's a community of artists that come together to create. They call it playing out in Nashville, which I'm sure you did, where you went into these, it's like a restaurant or something. It could be anywhere. It could be a cafe. And the writers would come together. Think about this, writers who had nothing, who had no idea if they even had talent, but would come together, and that's where the big careers were born. Tell us about that, because I think it's fantastic.
Well, it goes back to even when, if you know anything about Chris Christopherson or Willie Nelson,
sure.
They didn't move to town rich. You see what I'm saying? It was just all creativity.
We should have this coda about this too in this book. There's not a pursuit of material things in this book.
It's never been important to me in my life.
No, we could see. You don't care. But what you do care about is this kind of connection and excellence, audience to performer. Now let's get into it.
Well,
sorry, I
for
interrupted.
me,
but
it's all good.
Much to discuss.
Look, for me, I'm about as normal as anybody can be in having gone through the last I mean, I went on the road in 1993. So what's that, 32 years?
32 years.
I mean, I probably spend less money on clothes than anybody on the road. I take less time to get ready for a show than anybody. I just, I'm pretty normal in those ways. But I can tell you that being up there on stage, and the reason that I've done it for so long is because the connection that you get when you see the faces of people, and they could be anywhere in the world they wanted to be, but they're right there, and you see that connection. That connection is addictive. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to write this book, because it's two different people, and you touched on it earlier. I'm this person, and then I'm more thoughtful and singer-songwritery, but when I'm up there, it's a completely different person. And I don't know how to explain it, and I can't explain it. And it's people say, "How do you do what you do?" And I don't know.
Well,
it's
you use all your values in a certain way when you perform, because it's a muscular, high octane being that you become.
But none of that has anything to do with material things. It's
Right,
all about connection.
You, in fact, you're not counting the people out there
No.
or what you're making. The great ones don't.
We never release how much money we make. Never. Because it's irrelevant. I mean, that's
also
only
would be
ego.
terrible.
That is only, people that do that, it's only to beat their chest, and it's because of this certain box they have to check within themselves. We don't feel like we have to do that. We would rather talk about how much joy there was in the building that night.
Okay, and during your show that whatever the set list is that night, you have had a personal relationship with every one of those songs, whether you wrote it and then brought somebody in to write with you, or each one must conjure some kind of memory that throws gas on that fire out there when you're performing.
Well, you talk about church earlier and faith. Well, one of the reasons that I love to do what I do is because, let's just say, I'm playing somewhere here. Let's just say it's Madison Square Garden, or where it's MetLife, whatever it is, or a club down the street, no matter where it is. When it's really great in there, and the night is it's one of those out of body moments, right? And you can't stop it. It's like an avalanche coming right at you, and you can't stop it. It's a shared experience. This is one of the things that I love about live music, is because all of us can be in that room that night. And I'll come back the next year, and it won't be the exact same group of people. It's something different, right? And that's what I love about live music, and what makes me, work so hard. And because that is the most special thing, is when you're up there and it's such a shared moment that it will never be recreated, and it's just awesome.
It cannot. You're hitting a major vein in being an artist, which is it cannot be replicated because it is soul driven. It can't be replicated. But we're living in a world where there's going to be these cheesy AI versions of ourselves.
I've seen many versions of me. It's unbelievable. But it's
But it isn't real, and I think the audience can feel.
Well, that's what I'm just talking about in that moment. That's the most real thing we have. Or imagine a kid being there on the front row. This is his first concert ever. And I feel like that if I do my job, he might have music in his life for the rest of his life. And if I don't connect with him, then the moment's passed. And so I think about those kind of things. Or if I don't connect with him, he's going to go and be back on his phone, whatever. But yeah, it's a much different
you write
mindset for me. When
you write a song and you collaborate, take us into that. Maybe one of your favorite. You write about the songwriters in the book, and which sent me down rabbit holes for a month, just playing people that I McAnally.
Oh, Mac McAnally is incredible.
McAnally. I
Yeah,
mean,
Mac
I can't say
McAnally.
run, listen.
Yeah, he's unbelievable, really. And
But
he was in
he
Jimmy
gets
Buffett's
you.
Coral Reefer Band.
Yeah, Jimmy Buffett.
One of the best singer-songwriters ever. And I've written a lot of songs with Mac. But these are guys that feed my soul, right? I talk about in the book about there's this guy that I really looked up to as a songwriter named Dean Dillon, who is just, country music's version of a tortured soul, like Ernest Hemingway-esque, right? And he and I are from the same hometown. He's from Knoxville. We have the same birthday.
Wow.
And we have written a lot of songs together on my boat down in the Virgin Islands. And those are some of my favorite, that's my favorite way to create. A lot of people get in rooms 9 to 5, try to
And
create.
treat it like a job.
Treat it like a job. I've done that, and I've written some songs like that have been hits. But my favorite way to do it is to live and then write about it.
Okay,
like Dean
so
and I did.
basically, you and Dean go down to your new Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I didn't even know the Virgin Islands existed.
You get in this circle that's happening here. It's like always a circle with you.
And an East Tennessee guy.
Yes,
yeah,
and he's East Tennessee too.
So I didn't look at it that way. You're right. I haven't really gone that far out of my foundation.
No,
in my life.
It's like a gold
Wow.
circle, and you didn't even put a toe outside of it.
I've just got a lot more people in it.
You got a lot more people
Yeah.
in there, and you can make the circle bigger. It's just you're not going to step out of it.
Yeah.
That's fair. But the book is this beautiful. It is stitched like fine embroidery as each of these events in your life happened to you, but you never, or did you? Now that's a big question I wanted to ask you. Did you ever go, I'm throwing it in, I can't do this anymore?
I don't think I ever got there. There was a moment that I was in. There's a chapter in the book called The Wall. Yeah. And I was really unhappy. I was just, I don't know, I was pretty numb to life. I'd been on the road nonstop, and I hate saying this because it makes me sound a little weak, because there's artists out there that have been on the road their whole lives, and never took a year off, and I know those people. But for me, and the way we did it, it didn't take just a little bit of me. It took all of me. And I've had people in interviews go, well, we think it's so great that you give so much of your life to this. And I go, no. I give all of it to this. And I felt like I had to, or it wouldn't happen.
It's a 7-day-a-week. Like right now, we're talking to each other. You're writing something. Your subconscious is just.
You're right. So are you.
Okay, so am I. We're not really here. We're somewhere else.
We'll compare notes later.
But it's that thing that you have trained by not desire or hope or any of that. That's the seat of the soul, the imagination, the subconscious that never lets you down. It's how I can kind of understand how Tony Bennett got up there. He couldn't remember anybody, but he could remember the songs.
The songs, yeah.
Oh, my God. And he didn't want to leave the stage.
Yeah.
It was the last time he sang. I was there, and I thought, and he's in his 90s, that's going to be you.
Oh.
You're going to be in your, you're going to hit your 100th birthday and have
Can
a
you
party
imagine
with
being 90
pyrotechnics.
and up there singing "She Thinks My Tractor's Sexy"? Can you imagine that? I don't know. I mean,
That's the first thing my daughter said. She said she thinks, Mom, it's the coolest song. I said, I think I know it.
Anderson Cooper, I did a segment of 60 Minutes. It's 20 years ago, and it was Anderson Cooper's first segment that he ever did for 60 Minutes. Okay, and I'm sitting down with Anderson, and I'm going, okay, where's he going to go? And he goes, well, let's talk about "She Thinks My Tractor's Sexy." This is Gloria Vanderbilt's son, and he's asking me about "She Thinks My Tractor's Sexy." I said, well, I was smart enough to record it and smart enough not to ever record another one.
Yes.
And so, and that's true.
Because you didn't want to. I
didn't want to be.
She thinks my Harley's sexy.
Yeah, it was just whatever.
She thinks my golf cart's sexy.
But going back to your creating thing you were talking about is like I was that curious as a child, and I've always just I still am, and that's where the creative part of my life came from, and I just think that to be able, and I know you can understand this because you're a creative soul, to be able to create something even before you give it to the world, it's like like your own little secret, right? And I love that about being a songwriter.
I love that too.
You know,
I love nobody
It's-
knows yet.
Nobody knows yet. And then, but when you give it to the world, it's like a gift that didn't even exist yesterday when you create it, right? So that's what I love
incredible.
what I've always loved about songwriting, and now writing books.
And now writing books. And, you know, it's such a breezy, effortless, beautiful read. I think there's a lot of depth here. What I loved about it is what I love about the way you perform is there's layers. So you're going to go down rabbit holes. You can write down names like I did. There were thousands of them. I just kept writing. Look, I mean, I could just show you.
You got notes.
I got a lot of notes, but everything that you. Oh my gosh, I did all this without even having to look. So then I just started. I started doing this. I put Kenny. I put Dolly Parton, Conway Twitty, Loretta Lynn, George Jones, Tammy Wynette, Ronnie Millsap. Remember Ronnie?
Of course.
The Oak Ridge Boys.
Of course.
About
My
the
grandmother
Statler
loved
brothers.
the Oak Ridge Boys.
Statler Brothers.
Oh, God, yeah.
Now, when you saw that
They
heavenly,
were from Virginia.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, Stanton. Well, I think we say
I think
Stanton.
it's Stanton, yeah.
We say Stanton. We don't say Staunton, but it's spelled like
Yeah.
Staunton, but it says Stanton. Okay. First person I saw was Eddie Rabbit at the Wise County Fair. When
I
you
played
saw
the Wise County Fair once.
What did you think?
I thought it was great.
A lot of mud. Did you have to pick? Did you have
Also
to pick? Did you pick Miss Wise County because you know they would do that?
No, I wish I had him.
Well, all right. Well, you missed out. They didn't ask you. Delbert McClinton, Hank Williams Jr.,
Yeah. All those people at the Wise County Fair?
Alabama.
Yeah, see, Alabama had a big part of my life. I mean,
Let's
they
talk
were
about
a big-
Alabama.
Alabama was our, when you grow up in East Tennessee, we were aware there was a Rolling Stones. I mean, we were. But I never got into like I said earlier, you only hear what you were
Yes, but
given. So I knew there was the Beatles. I knew there was Rolling Stones. I knew there was Elvis because my mom loved Elvis. But as a child growing up, we heard a lot of Alabama, and to us, they were different because they dressed like us, and they talked like us, and we knew by the way they represented themselves on stage that they probably lived their life just like us. And so that's why I connected with those guys. And then you take that. I went to see them with my mom and my stepfather in a field. And they were huge at the time. And they played a field about 10 miles from my house. Big festival. Not like these big festivals today, like, Stagecoach or Coachella or wherever it is. This was pretty basic. But we went and something happened inside of me. A lot like the night with Conway, but more so on this night because it was more like what I would do now, looking back. It had such an impact on me because
look at the costumes.
it was
They're the
loud.
same.
Yeah, they were not like and what's crazy is like their manager ended up being my manager for all these years.
I wanted to get to him.
And all these
Mm-hmm.
and I went on the road with Alabama, and so I don't know. I talk about this. I wouldn't say a lot in the book, but it's a point I make in the book. Is I feel like a lot of this was written down, and I feel like, and I believe that the older that I get, the more I know that we're connected in ways that we never see coming. The universe is crazy, and so we're all connected, and I believe that, and. So when I was writing this book and I was thinking about how much I loved Alabama, and I remember them coming down on a helicopter in front of the whole audience that night, and there was them and this white-haired guy who's prematurely gray, and that ended up being my manager for 30 years, the guy that was in the helicopter with them. Now, what's the chances of that kid in the audience and those guys in the helicopter becoming friends and working together? It's almost next to nothing.
Next to nothing. And the helicopter landing in the field made the whole thing feel almost like extraterrestrial. Like this is bigger than me, than the world, than the people standing here. And listen to Alabama again, everybody, because my God, that's like the richest harmonies in the history of music. It's incredible.
So they had a big impact on my life.
Huge. Yeah. So, okay, but the manager, you know when I cried in the book, I actually welled up when he said, "I'll work with you." Did you remember that moment in the book? You're gonna sob.
Because I knew who he was, and I
knew he was the one.
And I didn't.
It's like Landau for Springsteen.
That's exactly right. And I didn't have anything going on, and nobody cared if I had anything going on. But I knew who Dale was. I was being produced by a guy named Barry Beckett, who produced a lot of songs you hear on the radio today that are pre-streaming and today. Odds are Barry Beckett's playing piano on that record. So he was my record producer for the first 2 albums that I did, and then he's the one that introduced me to my manager Dale Morris, and it was the fact that Dale, and to this day, Dale and I still don't have a contract. We never signed a contract.
You're not a New Yorker at all.
We said if we don't want to be in each other's lives, we won't be, and because there was this trust and this bond that started right there, we've never had a contract and never needed one.
What a partnership. Okay, well, I wrote all these folks down too, and it's all in the book. Jimmy Buffett, we got to him, but Eddie Van Halen, Alex Van Halen, Sammy Hagar, the Eagles, Dave Matthews, Bruce Springsteen, Patti Scialfa, Jackson Brown.
All those people touched my life in one way or another.
They came at you. Now, I don't want to leave out the women because the women are really important, like Linda Ronstadt.
Yeah.
That's the one I could share.
Blue Bayou is still one of my favorite all-time records.
It's the one artist I could share with my father.
Yeah.
Because he thought Bruce couldn't sing. He said, "How do you listen to him?" And I said, "He's working class, Dad, like you.
Right.
He's like working class." And he'd go, "Oh, can't get through it," because he was a Sinatra guy, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, the 50s and all that. But he also, when he heard Linda Ronstadt with the Nelson Riddle Orchestra,
yeah,
he said, "Now that one, she's got pipes." Natalie Cole, I gave her too.
So it was
all
a
these folks
specific.
are in your book.
Well, but you mentioned those names, and now think about my real manager and guy I went to high school and college with. His name's David Farmer, and in his garage, we were those kids in East Tennessee that had pool sticks, acting like they were guitars, playing Eddie Van Halen licks, and and pretending to be those rock stars, and to think that you become friends with those guys, and they would share the stage with you. One of our first stadium shows in Los Angeles, Eddie, I got a call from Irving Azoff, who was managing Van Halen at the time, and said Eddie wants to come to the show, and he wants to come play. And the whole crew, everybody that worked for me was on the side of the stage to watch that. It was a moment that if I live to be 120 and can't remember a thing, I will remember that.
You'll remember that.
Yes.
Eddie's considered the greatest in history, Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah,
it's often talked about that he's the greatest. He was the greatest living.
But you think about what I said
guitarist.
earlier. Think about that kid. Well, I opened the book on my back in my grandmother's backyard, staring up at the sky, and I had this dream, and I didn't know if it wasn't music. It was just wondering if there was anything past my county line, right? Because we didn't have light pollution. We just had stars. That was it. So think about that kid, and then think about that list of people you just marked off. I mean, if you don't think that's not predetermined or written down somewhere, you're crazy. So.
And it has to be.
It has to be.
And even when you're inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, you're almost acquiesced to it. You're not taken aback by it. You're very grateful.
I'm very grateful.
But you couldn't believe it on some level.
Still can't believe it. And in a lot of ways, and I hope everybody takes this the right way, I still haven't accepted it because we're still grinding.
Oh, no, you're just,
you're
you're mid-grind. You're totally mid-grind. You have
I'm getting
so
inducted.
much ahead of you.
You see what I'm saying? I'm
totally
so grateful, and I can't believe it that I'm going into the Country Music Hall of Fame.
You feel too young and too new.
Yeah.
And too how did this happen to me? But people are standing back but looking at you and going, he's the man. He gets it. He got it. He did it.
So, well, thank you. But that's how I feel. And
True.
I hope they don't take that in a negative, disrespectful way. But I just can't believe it.
By the way, that
Like-
is so where we're from. When you go, don't take this the wrong way. And
Right.
usually after that was a bomb would drop.
Well, because we have empathy.
We have empathy.
That's
We have empathy.
Empathy
We also
means-
want to live.
That's right.
You know, you had to navigate those dark country roads. You had to navigate those kids.
That's exactly right.
That were amazing and scary at the same time. I'd love to bring into the conversation Holly Gleason. Holly, come up.
Let's bring in Holly
Let's
Gleason.
bring in Holly Gleason. She's got a chair.
See, now I wrote this book. Holly was the one. Not only did I write it, I lived it, but Holly Gleason was the one to give it a heartbeat, a pulse, was the glue, and she's the one that weaved all the stories. That's the truth. I mean, that's. I'm very proud of Holly Gleason.
Well, we love her already. To read the book is, see, but there again, you don't go outside that gold circle. You're a collaborator. You have the 120 people on the road with you. You have the people that you write with. You have Dale. I mean, no, I'm serious. This is a revelation to me as an artist. And, you know, this room's full of artists. These are all people that are coming up and they're figuring it out and they're finding their voice and everything. And Holly has been writing about the scene for a very, very long time, in the best of ways, Holly, because you were a child when you started with this.
I was a baby.
You were a baby.
Yeah.
But in this book, you did what I think the great books do when there is a collaboration, which is it's Kenny's voice. You never sacrificed his voice. And you didn't correct his grammar sometimes, even though he is very educated. But sometimes you would say,
I talk how I talk.
That's exactly how the book sounds. So how did you do that? How did you capture the voice?
Well, a couple things. I think that the people even that only know you through your songs know who and what you are. So anything that would pull away from that would be a lie to the fans. And No Shoes Nation is one of the most true step up, step in places. I call it a country without borders. And everybody knows him, right? They're there because of what Kenny's heart is and what he puts in his music. So it wasn't as hard as I think you'd think. Just
I was really just in the sense of the writing of it. I was really impressed by there is such a consistency in the language and the voice from the beginning to the end, and you're gripped in it. You're gripped. You enter the world, and then by the end, you really don't want to leave. But that's the place when you do the self-deprecating part, where you say, "I can't believe I'm here getting this award," and God, that's such a great gift to the reader, because it demonstrates to the reader, it tells the reader that this guy told me the truth this whole book, because he's a little scared and he's a little in awe of it. He's not sure he should get it. Oh, I love that. And that there's a lot of emotions in this autobiography that you wove so expertly. It's seamless, and I don't know how you did it. I didn't think I could do that. If you gave me 10 years, I don't think I could pull that off.
well, I mean, do I tell?
Yeah.
For 25 years, Kenny is often the very first voice I hear in the morning. And also the very last voice I hear at night. So
So this is a long-standing, deep friendship. Again, typical of him. The kind of friendships he makes. You get the guys from your childhood traveling with you.
and everybody cares. Everybody who has any contact with Kenny cares.
I have to say, Holly, when we talked before, I was like, could he be this good? I mean, listen, I think you're brilliant, and I love your work. But I thought, could he be that nice? Because he's going to be that. Could he be? I thought, ooh, I don't know. And now you proved it. Yeah. I don't mean to be, I wasn't a doubter, but I was a little doubter. A little weeny, teeny weeny bit. Because the magnitude of his reach,
It's mind-boggling.
I can't get my head around. I can't. It's too many millions. It's going to be 1 billion in like 4 minutes. Like it's like McDonald's hamburgers. It's going to be like, you know.
But all you have to worry about is you two. That's the beauty of Kenny. You only have to worry about you two.
That's right. There's just okay. So how did you do this? Did you start at the beginning, or was the first scene of this book the end? As I was interested that you went chronological, but you didn't have to, Holly, because you've done so many. You could have done anything you wanted with it. And I noticed this too. You kept it on the story. There's one set of lyrics in here, I think, or two. But it wasn't, because when I picked it up, I went, this is going to be full of lyrics.
Not a ton.
It was full of him.
Right. Well, because that's what I think people have the songs. They wanted him. So, I mean, the book basically, Kenny had the idea of how he wanted it to start. When he finally said, okay, I'll do it. Because he didn't want to.
You really didn't want, you felt like, again,
I didn't.
too young. I got too much ahead of me to be writing an autobiography. Am I right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
But the way we did it, again, I've been here for 25 years, so I've seen a lot of it. We knew what he wanted to begin with, and then it was just kind of what do we want to talk about today?
Got it.
And we bounced around. We were in, 5 or 6 cities we did this in?
We went to a lot of places that was important to me. We obviously, the first place we talked was in California. And then we talked at my home in the Virgin Islands. And then we did a lot of the book in Key West. And then a
lot of books have been written down there, you know.
A lot.
Good juju.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good juju down there.
So where else? I mean, anywhere. Some
came
in
to
Nashville.
Palm Beach 'cause I
Palm
lived
Beach.
there.
Yeah. So.
And my dog was there.
But there was no rhyme or reason to it, really. We were just talking about my life, and we were talking about certain things. And this isn't a start to the beginning to now memoir. It's just it's important parts of my life. It is chronological, but it's vignettes and postcards from that era.
It's the journey.
Of stuff, yeah, and it talks about the journey, and Holly brought this up. I mean, it really is more about the dream of it all than anything.
And also, I said a primer. I think I was wrong. I think it's like a workbook, and you hit the big one, which was it isn't some, it's all, folks. It's your whole life. It has to be that way. It has to.
Yeah, I think that what we wanted to do was to also, and Holly can talk a lot more about this than I can, but we wanted to show if there's some artist in this audience or any artist out there on any level, whether it's in whatever, any way you want to create, that there is another way than doing it with social media and algorithms. And this book talks a lot about. It doesn't talk about that specifically, but you can't read this book and go, "Oh wow, they didn't have any of that stuff." That didn't happen.
It had to be true word of mouth.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
But you went back to, again, the way you were raised, and you took it to venues. You didn't care how small that venue was. No. You really didn't care. You played places that were teeny weeny, like people talking over you and all that stuff. But
we played for so many crowds that didn't care. I mean, it was unbelievable. But I cared, but we couldn't do anything about it because I wasn't there yet. There was a country artist. Remember Mark Chestnut?
Yes.
There was a country artist when I first started named Mark Chestnut. And so I started, and then I wanted everybody to know who Kenny Chesney was. And we would go play these clubs. There was these clubs all across America you could make a living at. And before you had any radio success at all. So 9 times out of 10, I was on the same bus, and we would pull up in the bus, and on the marquee, it would either say Mark Chesney or Kenny Chestnut. And it would really piss me off, because I didn't have anything to say, But now looking back, I think the club promoters did it on purpose, thinking they would get another 100 or 200 people in there to buy a beer or something.
They do that with book titles. Same thing.
So it's the same, and they used me to do that, I think. So.
Yeah.
So it wasn't always. I didn't just wake up one day and decide to play football stadiums. I mean, there was a lot of Kenny Chestnut in there.
Yeah, but those stories are in the book too.
Yeah.
Those stories are in the book when you couldn't. But then something happened in a club one night when you played, and usually they talked over you and they drank over you and they smoked over you, but there was that one night where they listened, and that's how you kind of knew to keep.
Well,
on
there
that
was a
path.
moment in Orlando, Florida, at a club called 8 Seconds. Now, I'd been on the road 3 or 4. I don't really know how many years, but we'd all been in one bus for a long time, and we were opening for people, and they would have probably done much better hiring a local band that had some sort of local following than having us open for them, because nobody knew who we were. And so there was years of that, and then we'd play clubs, and there would be nobody there except for the bartenders and the staff. Really, I'm not joking. And then we put out a song called the song was called "Me and You," and that was the first song that really moved the needle, if you will. And we pulled up when that song was just getting into the top 10. We pulled up to a club called 8 Seconds in Orlando, Florida, and I looked out the window and saw something that I hadn't seen before, and that was a lot of people waiting to get in. And it wasn't Alabama's audience; it was my audience. It was people that all of a sudden cared about what we were doing and had connected on some small level. And that night changed our life. That was the beginning of everything that happened to us. But it was the beginning of us creating this beautiful audience that it's been built into. It's called No Shoes Nation, and that night was where it started.
Wow.
And it's a really good chapter. So if you're going to read the book.
It's a really good chapter.
It's a really good chapter.
No Shoes Nation. Who wouldn't join that crew?
Yeah, it's a mindset.
It's a mindset for sure. But again, it's that circle.
Yeah.
It's that circle. It's gathering community, playing music best you can. It is bringing your friends and family and buddies and kids and whoever the heck. It's also... It's an homage to the water, to the ocean, to the places that you go. No Shoes Nation. You're going to be in the sand.
That's why we
for
call
that.
the title that.
Or the grass, or wherever it is.
Yeah, that's why
But,
it's called Heart Life Music. Right there. Because you take what's in your heart and all those things, the water, the music, the sunsets, the family, the church,
Sean
the creativity, the what?
Sean Payton.
Sports, Sean Payton, everybody. And you live your life like that. And luckily for me, I had music to connect all the dots. That's why we called this book that.
I have this feeling that no matter what your art form would have been, Kenny, you'd have been great. Because you pay attention. You pay attention to people. I haven't heard you say I or me once in this conversation. It's always us. Of course, that's also a way to deflect failure. In case it happened to you, Kenny, say us so that all that shit doesn't fall on you.
Yeah.
But if something goes wrong. But truthfully, you're what we call the real deal. That's what you are. And I'm so happy to have met you, and so happy to meet Holly, even though we've been on the phone quite a few times or emailing each other.
We're happy to be here.
But I'm so glad. And Book of the Month, how could we thank you, Brianna and John and your whole team? It's been fantastic. And our beautiful, oh my God, thank you for everything you did back there. Eric, did you work some magic? How's that camera? Did you put that Vaseline on there? I need that Vaseline, honey. It's like Gloria Swanson moment right up here, okay? Melting like that. But we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you.
We're going to get everybody to read it, read it.
Thank you for having us.
Everybody.